Whether it's audiobooks or all-time greatest hits, long live listening to your favorites. Learn more about Kisqali Ribociclib 200 milligrams at KISQALI.com and talk to your doctor to see if Kisqali is right for you.
Sometimes love comes and goes. Sometimes not all romances stay in love. The year is 2011 and a chaotic situation emerges in bustling Washington, D.C. 36-year-old Selena Knight is found. Was it true love, a secret obsession, or a robbery gone wrong? What happened to Selena Knight? What happens when love becomes fatal? This is the Fatal Attraction Podcast with Writing on the Wall, Selena Knight.
She was finally settling down with the love of her life.
She was crazy about it.
He was her one true love.
She believed that they would be together forever.
But their forever would end far too soon.
She didn't make it.
She was drowning in her own blood.
There were multiple stab wounds.
And on the wall near her body, a message from the killer.
There were these words, these hateful words.
It was a lie. It was all a lie.
But someone knows the truth.
She started getting close to him. She felt comfortable spilling her secrets.
This was some person that took advantage of her.
It was starting to boil and get bigger and bigger.
This shouldn't have never happened.
I just don't know how could evil be around like that.
March 4th, 2011. It's Friday night in the nation's capital, and the downtown bars and restaurants are packed with residents enjoying life in this rapidly changing city.
Washington, D.C. was in the throes of the whole gentrification. Rents were going up.
But not every part of the city has been transformed.
The southeast side of DC was basically low-income housing.
A majority of the crimes in the nation's capital happen in the southeast neighborhood.
Which explains why a worried Sharon Brunton knocks on her sister Selena Knight's Southside apartment door at 11:30 that night.
Selena? Selena, are you home?
We had been talking back and forth throughout the evening, and then she stopped answering the phone.
It wasn't like Selena not to return a call or return a text message.
I just knew something wasn't right.
When there's no answer to her knock, Sharon lets herself in with a key.
When it went in, she was covered with a comforter. Like she was asleep on the couch.
Selena, it's me.
Oh, thank God. Sharon immediately thought that's why she didn't hear the phone.
But Selena isn't asleep.
Selena, no!
When I pulled the cover back, she was gone.
There was blood all over her body.
She just screamed and called 911.
911 emergency.
It's an emergency, it's my sister.
It just felt like my center just fell out. Just like some part of me was just snatched out.
There's so much blood.
One of 4 siblings, 36-year-old Selena Knight always stood out among her large and loving family.
She was so pretty. She had the biggest, brightest eyes. She was the sweetest thing in the world. It was just her personality. I can't really explain it. Everybody just liked her.
She was just a fun, lovely person, joyful, and she loved the people. She would do for people,
Selena's love for helping others also led her to a fulfilling career.
She got a job doing like home health.
Her career was very rewarding.
But what Selena looked forward to most was finding love and starting a family of her own.
She loved children. She just loved babies.
She would take her little niece, her little nephews, and go all over the place. All she really wanted was a home and kids.
Her first chance at love and a family of her own had been with a young man named Dion Brown.
He used to hang out in the neighborhood.
They got hot and heavy pretty quickly.
They were together for a few years, but they eventually broke up.
But it wasn't long before Selena would meet a new man who'd make her forget all about Dion. 34-year-old Keith Littlepage.
Come on out, my queen.
He had a little smooth operator kind of thing going on with him. I guess she liked that because he pursued her for a bit and then eventually started dating. He was a handsome guy. She was crazy about him. She cared a lot about him.
They did everything together.
And he was crazy about her.
However, as crazy as they were about each other, the relationship wasn't perfect.
Keith would go in and out of jail a lot. Most of his charges were like drug charges.
But they would always stay in touch.
She would go visit and write letters and send pictures and just be kind of support system for him while he was in there.
However, Selena didn't always wait on Keith.
It was an on-again, off-again relationship.
They might separate for a period of time and then she may date someone else.
Although in 2007, when Selena started dating a man named Wes Shackelford while Keith was away in jail, it looked like someone else might turn into someone special.
He treated her right. He made her happy.
He was a perfect boyfriend, exactly what she needed.
But then, at the end of 2010, Selena abruptly ended things with Wes.
The moment that Keith had gotten out of prison, Wes was history. Selena's heart belonged to Keith.
She said, I'm going to marry him.
She wanted to try and become pregnant. She really, really wanted to be a mom.
But fate would have other plans for Selena.
It's an emergency. It's my sister.
Selena was stabbed multiple times.
Police and EMTs arrive within minutes, but there's nothing they can do.
She didn't make it.
Now it's up to detectives to determine if Selena's death is just another sad neighborhood statistic.
There are a lot of crimes that happen in the area.
This was the third homicide of the night.
Or could this crime be more personal?
Someone had written in marker on the walls hateful words.
This was something more than just a home invasion.
Stay tuned as detectives attempt to unravel the ongoing mystery and the ongoing lies.
Whether it's audiobooks or all-time greatest hits, long live listening to your favorites. Learn more about Kisqali Ribociclib 200 milligrams at KISQALI.com and talk to your doctor to see if Kisqali is right for you. In the spring of 2011, it looked as if Selena Knight and Keith Littlepage were finally settling down together.
Selena did love Keith, and she believed they would be together forever.
She cared for him. She said, grandmother, I'm going to marry him.
But now on March
Selena.
4th, her sister Sharon has just found Selena dead inside her Washington, D.C. apartment.
She's stabbed multiple times. The investigators on the scene found a lot of blood.
This wasn't a murder that had happened hours ago. This was very recent. There was fresh blood.
Detectives also believe that Selena never saw her killer coming.
Maybe she had fallen asleep with her door unlocked, allowing an intruder to slip in?
That would also explain the lack of any forced entry around the apartment's doors or windows.
Her television set had been stolen.
Home invasions were recently happening in the neighborhood, so they prepared to find a run-of-the-mill, if you will, home invasion that ended badly.
But then, in the kitchen, detectives make a discovery that suggests the killer had been after more than Selena's TV.
They see graffiti on the wall that says, "You gave me HIV."
This was definitely somebody who had a personal vendetta against Selena Knight. This was not a stranger attack, by no means.
They also find evidence that the killer tried to cover their tracks.
They find a bottle of bleach in the kitchen, and there's a shirt soaking in bleach in the sink.
Hoping to make sense of the killer's words, detectives turn to Selena's sister, Sharon.
They were trying to get information about who she had been dealing with and who could possibly be involved with it.
Detectives start by asking about the graffiti scrawled on the kitchen walls.
Do you know if she had HIV?
Yes. She found out back in 2002.
Selena kept getting sick.
I went with her to the clinic to find out what was wrong with her.
Sharon tells detectives that Selena had contracted HIV from her first serious boyfriend, Dion Brown.
He happened to be a heroin user. That's how he contracted it.
One thing I can say about my daughter, she never used drugs. I'm assuming they had unsafe sex. And she ended up with it, and he never said anything. And when they broke up, she didn't know that she was infected.
Now, how can we get in touch with Mr. Brown?
You can't. He's dead.
He was murdered here in D.C., shot in the back.
According to her sister, her HIV diagnosis initially sent Selena into a deep depression.
She kind of shut down after she found out that she had it. So she wasn't dating or anything like that.
However, the family rallied around Selena.
I would always try to encourage her and to try to lift her spirits and to let her know that this is not a death sentence for you. You can still have a good life, a productive life.
Eventually, Selena began to adjust to life with HIV.
The love that she got helped her through it. She's a strong person, strong-willed, strong-minded.
Selena also began to date again, responsibly.
Before having a relationship, she let them know about it, so they knew what they was getting into, and she practiced safe sex.
Selena did not want anyone else to go through what she was going through with this virus.
Sharon told them about Selena's longtime on and off relationship with Keith.
He knew everything from the very beginning. He didn't care. He loved Selena. He wanted to be there in her life, so he accepted it.
Is Keith the current boyfriend?
Well, no.
They had just recently broken up.
Sharon adds that as far as she knows, Keith is HIV negative.
Keith and Selena were always careful. Keith had been tested regularly and didn't have HIV. That message written on the wall just didn't jive with their relationship.
Despite that, detectives will need to eliminate him as a suspect.
Do you know if Keith still had a key to the apartment?
That could explain the lack of forced entry. But according to Sharon, Keith had given Selena's key back, and the apartment door was locked when she arrived.
Is there anyone else Selena could have been involved with?
There was Wes. She dated him back before she got with Keith.
Sharon explained that her sister had started seeing Wes while Keith was incarcerated.
But when Keith got out of prison, she went right back to him.
Selena couldn't bring herself to stay with Wes, knowing that her heart belonged to Keith.
Sharon tells detectives Wes was crushed by the breakup,
It really hurt the guy.
which could have given Wes a motive for murder.
When they learned Wes was angry, he was upset. Police had their first real lead.
Did Wes have a key to the apartment?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Sharon also tells detectives she has no idea what Wes's HIV status is. With 2 persons of interest already identified, detectives' next step is to find out exactly when the murder occurred.
I had been talking back and forth with Selena throughout the evening. And then around 10, she stopped answering. I just decided that I should go check on her.
Selena?
But what Sharon says next will add a new layer to the investigation.
Normally this wouldn't have concerned me too much, except with the recent robbery.
Robbery?
Someone had broken into Selena's house just days before the murder.
Everything in the house was ransacked. Everything.
Stay tuned as detectives attempt to unravel the ongoing mystery and the ongoing lies.
Whether it's audiobooks or all-time greatest hits, long live listening to your favorites. Learn more about Kisqali Ribociclib 200 milligrams at KISQALI.com and talk to your doctor to see if Kisqali is right for you. Detectives investigating the murder of 36-year-old Selena Knight have just learned that someone burglarized her Washington, D.C. apartment 3 days before her death.
All her things, her personal possessions, were broken and thrown and strewn everywhere.
What was taken?
Nothing much, actually. Just her TV.
Detectives had already made note of the missing TV earlier in the investigation.
However, apparently that wasn't a part of what happened the night Selena died. While little had been taken, Sharon says the robbery had rattled her sister.
After the robbery, Selena went and stayed with her mother for the next 2 nights.
In fact, Selena had only returned to her apartment the afternoon before her murder. Which raises an important question for detectives. Could the killer have been lying in wait?
Possibly that person came back.
Okay, thanks. We'll be in touch.
Back at the station, detectives pull the police report for the prior burglary at Selena's apartment and immediately notice an eerie similarity between the 2 events.
The day she was killed, no sign of forced entry. And this robbery and this burglary that happened 3 days before she was killed. Again, no sign of forced entry.
Detectives also discovered that it wasn't Selena who had reported the robbery. It was her ex-boyfriend, Keith Littlepage.
When police look at the report, they realize he was the one that actually called it in. He had gone to Selena's apartment to talk to her and realized the door was open.
He reported this break-in and this theft and this burglary to police.
Which to detectives might suggest that Selena's previous boyfriend, Wes Shackelford, was the thief and possibly Selena's killer.
Maybe he robbed the place to scare her, then later decided to go back and finish the job.
But when detectives bring Wes in for questioning the following morning, the man Selena left for Keith appears genuinely broken up about her murder.
Hello, Wes.
Wes said he found out the news from Selena's sister, Sharon.
When detectives asked Wes if he knew that Selena had been robbed a few days before her murder, he seemed even more shocked. But is it just an act?
When was the last time you saw her?
It's been a while.
He tells police that he hasn't seen Selena. It's been a few months, in fact.
How did you feel about your breakup?
It was tough.
The breakup hit him pretty hard. Wes was kind of wondering, what happened here? We were doing fine.
Were you upset enough to harm Selena?
Oh.
He's just trying to move on with his life.
Detectives aren't so sure, though.
When detectives asked if Wes had a key to Selena's apartment, he claimed he didn't.
He also confirmed that he knew Selena was HIV positive, but he said it never mattered to him.
You don't have HIV.
No. We were careful.
Would you be willing to take a test to prove that?
Sure.
But before detectives arrange for a test, it seems Wes has an airtight alibi.
I'll take your test. I wasn't even in town last night. I rushed back this morning when I got the news.
Wes said he had been out of town for work.
We're gonna need to corroborate that, you know.
Yeah, I understand.
Detectives give Wes's employer a call and confirm his story.
He was nowhere near DC on either night that the incidents occurred, the burglary and the murder.
With Wes ruled out, detectives bring in their only other person of interest, Selena's most recent ex, Keith Littlepage.
Like Wes, Keith appeared quite distraught over Selena's death.
I just can't believe she's gone.
They had 20 years off and on. They were supposed to get married. Keith said they'd been talking about trying to have a baby, too.
It was obvious that Keith still cared about Selena.
Which leads detectives to their next question.
So why did you two break up?
It was Selena. She met someone else.
Keith told the police that Selena had recently met a guy named TJ and that he was pretty sure that they were hooking up.
But I was still trying to work things out with her, though.
According to Keith, that's how he ended up reporting the break-in at her apartment.
Keith said he went into the apartment to check on Selena and was shocked by what he saw.
Someone had ransacked the apartment.
So you called the police?
Yeah, and then I called Selena.
Keith told her to get home immediately because there had been a break-in.
By the time she returned home, officers were already there taking the report.
Police talked to her and Keith. She was able to look around and see that her television had been taken.
I dropped by her house.
But Keith says that as soon as police left, Selena abruptly turned on him.
She lost it. She actually blamed Keith that he wanted to get back at her.
While Keith insisted it wasn't him that had robbed her, Selena was having none of it.
And that was the last time you saw her?
Well, no.
Keith admits that he'd gone by Selena's apartment early Friday evening.
He was like, well, I wasn't staying there anymore, but I came over there to ask her, can I take a shower?
You think you let me take a shower? Please?
Keith was basically homeless at this point.
I stayed at a homeless shelter.
He said he had been spending the nights at a shelter.
Selena, come on. Please?
Okay, come on, you can take a shower, but you cannot stay. Come on.
Why not?
Keith told the investigators that it was about 7 o'clock when he got to Selena's, and he was there for less than an hour.
He says he left and went back to the homeless shelter, and police estimate that Selena was killed maybe 2 to 3 hours after that.
However, according to Keith, Selena was expecting someone else that evening.
How do you know?
She told me.
Come on, you can take a shower, but you cannot stay. Come on.
Why not?
Because I'm having company.
Keith told detectives that Selena had this other guy coming over there.
This TJ fella?
I'm not entirely sure.
Whoever he was, detectives needed to find him.
Could it be her killer?
Stay tuned as detectives attempt to unravel the ongoing mystery and the ongoing lies.
Selena Knight's ex-boyfriend, Keith Littlepage, has just told DC police that she was expecting company the night she was murdered.
Because I'm having company.
Keith said that Selena had this other guy coming over there.
Keith says he wasn't sure exactly who Selena was expecting, but he believed it was a man named TJ Barnes.
Keith told the police that she had recently been spending more time with some guy named TJ and that they were definitely hooking up.
When detectives bring TJ in for questioning the next day, he doesn't deny knowing Selena.
TJ told the police that he has known Selena for years.
So, Selena, you two are friends?
Yeah. We were friends.
He said there's nothing romantic or physical happening there.
TJ also denied being the cause of Selena's breakup with Keith.
TJ claims that Selena decided to break up with Keith because after his latest release from prison, he was no longer the man she had fallen in love with.
He started changing. He started being possessive.
He became really smothering. I mean, if she's on the phone having a conversation, he's listening in on the calls. Anywhere she would go, he would somehow end up there. She could hardly spend time with family. It was too much.
It was a normal day.
But according to TJ, the breakup hadn't been the end of Selena's troubles with Keith.
He wasn't going to give up. No, he wasn't taking no for an answer.
TJ tells detectives that Keith kept coming around, trying to win Selena back, but she was done for good.
She didn't want anything to do with him anymore. She had kicked him out, and she had made her decision, and it was final.
And that's when he trashed her apartment.
She believed that Keith was involved in this robbery and this burglary that happened 3 days before she was killed.
After that, TJ says he'd spent as much time as he could with Selena.
As a friend?
Yes, because I was worried about her.
He knew Selena needed protection.
TJ says that an incident the day before Selena's murder confirmed that he'd been right to worry about Keith.
TJ told police that he and Selena were downtown and Keith showed up out of nowhere.
According to TJ, Keith got in Selena's face to try to get her to talk with him.
I need to talk to you.
He was pulling on her or trying to make her come with him. And I guess her friend thought that he was being a little physical.
And that's when I stepped in. And I asked him to leave.
He pushed Keith away, told him to leave, that he and Selena were leaving, and Selena didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore, and actually roughed Keith up a bit.
And he just left?
Yeah, but he was really mad.
TJ tells police that he had heard random phone calls from Keith. Keith had recently been calling her incessantly and yelling and screaming and threatening her, and the calls were so loud he couldn't help but to overhear.
And one of the threats TJ supposedly overheard is of particular interest to detectives.
Hey, I'm gonna tell everybody you gave me HIV.
Keith made threats about telling Selena that he was going to tell the world that she had given him HIV. And it did coincide with the graffiti that was written on the wall in Selena's apartment the night she was murdered.
Which was really interesting for detectives because at this point, they hadn't told TJ about the graffiti.
Does that suggest that Keith is Selena's killer? Or is it all a little too convenient?
They have to wonder, did Keith in fact write those words, or is this TJ shifting the blame to Keith to take the heat off of him?
And when detectives ask TJ for an alibi, they wonder even more.
When police asked TJ where was he that night of the murder, he said he just got off of work and went straight home.
Can anyone corroborate this?
Not really. I live alone.
All right, you're free to go.
Since TJ doesn't have an alibi, detectives pull his criminal record after the interview and discover he doesn't have one.
They realize that TJ's absolutely clean.
There's nothing to indicate that TJ might be capable of stabbing Selena multiple times.
But when detectives pull Keith's criminal record, it tells them a very different story.
He has a rap sheet a mile long.
Most of his charges were petty drug charges, but not all of them.
Keith had already gone to prison for killing another ex-girlfriend.
Stay tuned as detectives attempt to unravel the ongoing mystery and the ongoing lies.
Whether it's audiobooks or all-time greatest hits, long live listening to your favorites. Learn more about Kisqali Ribociclib 200 milligrams at KISQALI.com and talk to your doctor to see if Kisqali is right for you.
DC detectives investigating Selena Knight's murder have just discovered that her ex-boyfriend, Keith Littlepage, has done time for killing a previous girlfriend.
What investigators eventually learned is that when he was younger, in his early 20s, he was convicted of manslaughter and spent about 15 years in prison for killing a girlfriend.
This particular young woman, he actually beat with a baseball bat to death.
He met Selena after he had did that time for that manslaughter, within a year of that.
But apparently, he had never told Selena.
She didn't know about that. None of us knew.
He had a long violent history. None of this really knew until basically the courts.
If my daughter had known about it, she wouldn't have had nothing to do with him.
I can understand she loved him or whatever the case might have been, but you don't want to be with somebody that is capable of such things.
I was speechless. I couldn't believe it.
If I'd have known, she'd have never been out of my sight. Never.
You can overlook some stuff, but murder, I don't think many people can overlook that.
And now that Selena's dead, detectives are convinced that Keith has killed again.
His charge of voluntary manslaughter constituted a history of violence.
When detectives talk to Selena's other family members, they confirm much of what TJ previously told them, that Keith's behavior after the breakup had become increasingly unhinged.
He had been spiraling for a while, but the final week is when it really got worse.
Every time she turned around, she see him somewhere. He was stalking her, basically.
They are breaking up. Keith is growing angrier and angrier because essentially the breakup leaves him homeless.
He had to find somewhere else to live. His biggest support system is gone.
According to Selena's family, Keith had also convinced himself that her friend TJ was taking his place.
Keith had had a jealous streak.
He got that if I can't have you, no one can mentality.
That thought is echoed by another of Selena's friends, Tasha Varick, when she comes down to the station to give a formal statement.
She tells police that she had overheard multiple times Keith being threatening towards Selena.
Keith was somehow unraveling.
Threats were coming quick, fast, and more dangerously.
It was taking a toll on her, physically.
Tasha says Selena had even put Keith on speaker a few times when they were together, so she could hear some of the threats.
It was just all kinds of threats and things that he was going to do to her. He said, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to get you.
She would have the phone on speaker and you could hear him say, I'm going to erase you off this earth.
According to Tasha, Selena believed him too.
She said, if anything happened to me, it will be because of Keith.
When did she tell you that?
The day she died, when we went over to her apartment.
Tasha told detectives she had gone over to the apartment on the afternoon of the murder to help Selena clean.
Selena felt like everything in her told her exactly who it was, and she believed that Keith was out to get her.
She was a very clean person, and she liked everything in order, and she did not like seeing her stuff all over the place.
Tasha says she left around 6 o'clock.
I tried to get her to come with me, seeing what all he'd done.
Tasha just felt uneasy. She didn't want her best friend staying there after this break-in. But Selena, she hedged. She told Tasha she didn't want to go.
She said, no, I'm stay here.
She just would prefer to stay in her own apartment.
Did she say anything about someone coming over?
I don't think so.
She was going to go lay down and go to sleep.
Selena was exhausted. She just was tired.
Which fit with the evidence at the crime scene, suggesting that the killer had struck while Selena was asleep. However, one piece of the puzzle remains.
The blood at the crime scene was still fresh, which meant that Selena had been killed after Keith said he had checked into the homeless shelter.
That's when he told investigators that he was not there when she was killed.
He had told them exactly which shelter he attended and slept that night.
But when detectives follow up at the shelter, Keith's alibi falls apart.
There's no record of Keith ever having stayed there the night she died.
And detectives had no doubt why he lied.
Keith obviously killed Selena. No one saw him do it, but he had a motive. He had the opportunity.
This was a man that was on a mission.
Stay tuned as detectives attempt to unravel the ongoing mystery and the ongoing lies.
Washington, D.C. detectives investigating Selena Knight's murder are convinced the killer is her ex-boyfriend, 49-year-old Keith Littlepage.
Keith claimed that he was staying at a Southeast D.C. homeless shelter when the murder occurred, but there was no record of him ever checking in.
Coupled with the statements from Selena's friends and family, it's more than enough for an arrest warrant.
Friends heard Keith threatening Selena, telling Selena he was going to expose her and tell everyone that she had given him HIV.
Hey, I'm gonna tell everybody you gave me HIV.
Which coincides with the graffiti that was written on the wall of Selena's apartment.
So being able to put the two and two together, police were able to pretty much point all fingers in Keith's direction.
Police take Keith into custody on March 11th, 1 week after Selena's murder. The arrest is welcomed news to Selena's family.
I was happy, real happy. I said, now maybe they'll throw you underneath the jail and leave you there.
When Keith goes on trial on July 12, 2012, prosecutors portray him as a scorned ex-boyfriend, hell-bent on revenge.
Keith was angry because Selena had put him out, and Keith believed Selena was seeing another man.
Friends testify that in the weeks leading up to her murder, Keith began tormenting her with menacing phone calls.
It got progressively worse. He was this out-of-control madman toward the end, calling all day, every day, threatening that he was going to get her.
Prosecutors claim that on the night of March 4th, 2011, Keith had made good on his threats.
When she went to clean up her apartment, Keith decided to make his move.
He unlocked the door and creeped in.
More than likely, Keith had made a separate set of keys, a duplicate set.
Which allowed him to slip in without waking Selena.
He sees Selena asleep on the couch.
Keith goes into a rage and stabs her repeatedly while she is defenseless.
Then, his rage spent, he left Selena to die.
Keith calmly covers her back up.
He also made an attempt to cover his tracks.
He must have gotten blood on his shirt because he goes into the kitchen and takes off his shirt with evidence on it, soaks it in bleach.
He also disposed of the murder weapon.
The knife that Keith used was never found.
Most of all, before he left, Keith scrawls a message in Selena's kitchen.
he takes time to write on the wall that you gave me HIV. And this is his moment to think this is how he's going to outsmart the police. This is what he's going to do to point the finger in the opposite direction. This is how he's going to get away with murder.
Or would it be the thing that ensures his conviction?
The prosecutors kept using the phrase that Keith wrote, "You gave me HIV," over and over again. And that phrase just resonated in the courtroom. They also made it very clear that no one else was saying this publicly except for Keith.
When it's the defense's turn, they doubled down on Keith's alleged misdirection, arguing that it proves he couldn't be Selena's killer.
Keith's attorneys kept stressing whoever did this because they knew that they were HIV positive and they had contracted the virus from Selena. And this was retaliation. So they were saying this was not Keith, that Keith had no motive to kill Selena because he was not HIV positive.
Would that make a difference? That's what Selena's family fears when the jury retires to consider its verdict.
I remember Selena's mother worrying that jurors would hold her daughter's HIV status against her during their deliberations. She really believed that some of these jurors might see her daughter as some type of a monster.
Once people hear those 3 letters, they automatically start judging or think of her as some bad person.
But the jury's verdict leaves no doubt who was the victim and who was the monster.
I remember when the foreperson stood up and announced that they were finding Keith guilty. Selena's mom just broke out in tears.
I was ecstatic. It was a relief.
Keith was ultimately sentenced to 50 years in prison. Keith was 50 years old at the time.
50 years is life sentence for him. He got what he deserved. Selena got justice.
But no amount of justice can fill the hole that Keith tore in Selena's family.
My daughter, she had a long life ahead of her because even with being HIV positive, that's not a death sentence anymore. She'd be seeing her 46th birthday coming up, and he took those years away from her, from me, and the rest of her family.
She was my baby sister. She was an aunt. She was a daughter. We loved her, and because he couldn't have her, he took her from us.
A daughter and aunts, a go-getter, and a woman that left her family far too early. Selena's family and loved ones will continue to keep her memory alive. No matter the age or stage of a relationship, abuse is never acceptable. It is sad but true that danger can often masquerade as love, particularly within the confines of an abusive relationship. Together, let's break the cycle and foster healthy, respectful relationships for all.
Abuse is never okay. If you or someone you love is in an abusive relationship, there is help available. Call the Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE.
Coming up on the next episode of the Fatal Attraction Podcast.
A single mother of 5 thinks she's finally found the one.
She really felt secure with him.
He really embraced the role of father figure.
They are getting pretty serious.
But then she vanishes.
She walks down the street to the club.
She never returned back home.
Entangled in a web of lies and betrayal, was it true love or a fairy tale turned sour? What happened to Marion Fye? Tune in to the next episode of the Fatal Attraction Podcast. We will see you in the next episode.